If you want to be a wise guy, then it pays to have a little wisdom. There are guys you shouldn't cross, women you shouldn't touch.
Did I think that Larry's life was in danger? I knew that that wasn't the right thing to do. You know, love does funny things.
This is the story of how a promising young gangster, Larry Champagne Cora, met his end.
What choice did I have? What could I say? Oh, no, I'm not going to do it. Larry don't deserve that.
My name is Steve Schirripa. I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. I've seen good people turn bad and bad people turn worse. Some took contracts to carry out a hit. Some were victims of a hit. To hitmen, life and death are just part of the business. It's nothing personal. Big Sal Mota is a Mafia hitman. It's Friday night and Sal's got plans. Sal's gonna go out with a young wannabe gangster named Larry Carrozza.
I never thought about it, you know, as a moral issue. A lot of times, killing a guy meant more money for the family, more money for the boss.
Today, Sal lives in hiding. He has never told the story of what he did to Larry Carrozza until now.
If you're gonna hurt somebody, make sure you injure them severely so that they can't come back and exact revenge.
Sal Mota, he did a lot of work, killed a lot of people. Larry Carrozza was one of them. I think his reputation was fearsome. He was a go-to guy when it came to killing people.
For Sal, taking Larry out is just part of his job. For Larry, May 20th, 1983 will be his last day on Earth.
Larry wanted to be in the life, and here's the rules, here's the regulations. If you screw this up, you're gonna get killed.
Big Sal has told Larry they're gonna go find the guy who owes the family money and who hasn't been paying. They'll rough him up a little bit. It's a routine Mafia errand, but it's a big deal for Larry. He turned 30 a few weeks ago, and he thinks it's about time he was more than just another associate of the Mafia's Columbo crime family. If Larry'd been a little more astute, he might have noticed he wasn't asked to pack a weapon. Big Sal had one. Here's a little lesson for you. If you're invited to go out on a hit, do you want to be the shooter? Yes, you do. And here's why. If you're gonna get whacked, they never let you be the guy holding the gun. That would create a possibly unpleasant situation. So if they let you hold the gun, it's a good bet you aren't the one getting set up. It pays to think about things like that.
Larry's ambitions were definitely to be a wise guy. He wanted to be a guy, you know, like a tough guy. So I would say that he had the backbone to do stuff like that.
And why wouldn't Larry want in? For most of the 20th century, the mob ran New York.
The American Mafia was born in 1931.
Certain sections of New York belonged to different families, and Brooklyn would just happen to be the place that the Colombos resided, by and large.
The Columbo crime family is one of the 5 families in New York, and they control a myriad of illegal activities.
Their traditional methods of money were loan sharking, gambling, and although they didn't like to admit it, they were into narcotics.
It was overwhelming. I mean, they had a grip on all of New York. Nothing went on in New York without the mob having its hand in it.
Basically, any way they could make a buck, they did their best to get into it and make as much money as they can.
The Columbo family did have a reputation for being a family that you didn't want to fool with. They did not hesitate in using violence.
They were mythical in a lot of ways. in terms of their power and their ruthlessness.
9 out of every 10 made men in a mafia family have some way been involved in a murder. All the mafia families are violent. None of them has a reputation for being nonviolent. They believe whatever their interests are paramount. And their interest, if it has to be protected by murder, even multiple murders, that has to be carried out.
Like most gangsters, Larry Carrozza has a cover, a legitimate job. Jobs help keep the cops from getting too curious about what you do for a living. Larry was trained as a mortician. Ironic for a guy who aspires to a career of sending the unwilling to early graves.
Larry Carrozza was an undertaker. He was a very likable guy, you know. Everybody that I knew liked Larry.
Larry has just hit 30. He's been auditioning for years. You know, running scams with his mafia pals. But moving from being connected to actual membership in a mafia family is tough. Because once you're in for life. And if you don't work out well, let's just say the human resources department does not do layoffs.
If they feel they need to kill you for any reason, they'll kill you just like that, and you're gone.
Salvatore Big Sal Mota is one of the guys who handles the problem of gangsters who don't work out.
Murder was used as an economic tool. You know, the end always justified the means.
But why is it that Larry Carrozza is going to end up a customer at his own funeral home? What we've got here is not a whodunit, but a why do it. It didn't have to end that way. In the years before he got whacked, Larry Carrozza was a promising young gangster. His future looked as rosy as his cheeks. And the ladies sure go for that fresh-faced young tough guy.
Larry Carrozza was very charming. He was like an all-American kid. He was like an all-American guy.
It's a good thing that Tina likes Larry. He's kind of a fixture in our house. Tina and her husband, Sonny Francis, are mafia royalty, and Larry's mom and dad are part of their circle. So what could be better than for the kids, Larry and Gia, to fall in love? Well, there is a problem. Larry's already married. He has 3 kids.
A limousine was picking her up 2 nights in a row, and I said, "What is going on? I want to know. I saw a guy in there. What's going on?" And then she fessed up to me and told me that she was going with Larry Carrozza. And I said, "This is a problem. This is a serious problem. You know, you can't do that." Well, I love him, and that ends that.
It was a serious problem for a whole bunch of reasons. For starters, Gia Frances wasn't just any Italian-American teenage beauty. Her pop, Sonny, was an important guy in Larry's community. A well-known guy. Trouble is, what he was known for.
In his heydays in the 50s and the 60s, Sonny was a very feared guy in the Columbo family because of his reputation as being a very callous killer.
He wasn't one to go to Disneyland. He was busy all the time, but he was sensitive with his children. He was a good father.
John Sonny Francis was probably the most prolific killer in the history of the mob. I mean, he killed a lot of people.
But at home, Sonny is just dad, a proud pop with a lovely wife. Tina is a legendary beauty who, like her daughter, has a soft spot for tough men.
My family did not want me to marry him. Oh, they did not. Absolutely not. But I knew what I was getting into. I met Sonny at a dance, and he walked in with a lot of men, and I just assumed the fact that everybody was greeting him, he was some sort of celebrity or something like that.
Gia isn't Sonny's only kid. He and Tina have a whole brood. Their oldest is Michael, and that's another problem with the whole Gia-Larry romance. Michael is Larry's best friend. He and Larry have been like peas in a pod for years.
Michael and Larry were like inseparable. They were very close.
So Larry was in a position where he was in Michael's company every day, and he knew the whole family. He was like part of their family.
So Larry's a fixture in the Francesi family. Pals with Mike, charming mom, trying to get in with Sonny and falling in love with Gia. But here's another problem. Mobsters don't really have friends. They have associates. Larry might see Michael as his best friend and partner in crime, but Michael and Larry are on the move. They want to make it as new types of mobsters. The kids like easy money, sure. I mean, the apples, they don't fall far from that tree. But Michael Francese and his buddy Larry Carrozza were different from their dads and that whole older generation. It was the disco era. They called the old guys Mustache Pete's.
Then there was an influx of all these new, young, Americanized gangsters.
The new me generation culture makes the old guys uncomfortable. The old school guys, they try to keep a lid on violence. It's bad for business. The youngsters, they don't do low-key.
You know, they hit the street running and they just wanted to do everything they could get their hands on. And they were ruthless. They killed for no reason. They killed for any reason. They made up reasons. I mean, it was just totally out of control. It was wide open. Everything was wide open. Cops were on the take. Drugs were big. The talk around town was who was getting made and who was doing this and who was doing that, you know. And, you know, the disco places were full of guys, you know, wise guys and made guys who go in there, you know, it was their time to shine, you know.
Larry Carrozza is not a subtle guy. Thanks to the scams he and Michael have going, they're both doing very well. And when Larry does well, everybody's invited to the party.
Larry Carrozza liked the good life. Dom Perignon was his thing. He became known as Champagne Larry Carrozza.
Running around with Gia puts Larry smack in the middle of a Francese family drama. Gia's a problem child. She's beautiful, talented, artistic, but troubled. Drugs are one escape, sex is another.
Well, truthfully, I mean, she wasn't an angel. She had a lot of boyfriends. She really did. She was very sure of herself.
Sonny and Tina are unhappy about their daughter's wild ways. Larry might not be the cause, but he sure isn't helping.
Gia was heavily doing drugs at that time. I did not know cocaine. I couldn't foresee my children doing drugs.
Oh, sure, Larry's a family friend, but playing the married Romeo to Gia's junkie Juliet isn't a story that's likely to end with happily ever after. In the old school way of thinking, Larry was making Sonny Francese's teenage daughter Gia into a home-wrecking tramp. Did I mention Gia's dad was old school? That he was notoriously vicious? Yeah, I think I did. Larry was making what we call these days some bad choices.
It would have been a big mistake for Larry Carrozza to involve Michael Francese's sister, anything to do with narcotics, or have a relationship with her. Was not smart.
Did I think that Larry's life is in danger? I knew that that wasn't the right thing to do, but I just felt that we were gonna get past it. But, you know, love does funny things.
But like most people in love, Larry is oblivious. He's happy, and as far as he knows, the whole world is too. That spring of 1983, Larry might have thought things were coming up roses. Before summer, they'd be daisies, and he'd be on the wrong side of them. Larry, Larry, Larry. These three wise guys are heading out to hurt somebody, but only two of them really know who the target is. This guy here is the odd man out. For Larry Champagne Carosa, this is a one-way trip. Larry might believe he's surrounded by friends, but his circle includes some very dangerous people. And he's been doing things that upset them. Maybe all that bubbly has made him a little forgetful. After all, in the Mafia, there are rules to follow and toes too dangerous to step on.
When you took the oath, when they inducted you, you became made, you got your button, you were in it for life.
I felt that everybody that entered those doors knew what the rules and regulations were and knew what the penalties were if they broke one of those rules or regulations.
The family you belonged to, the organized crime life, the Mafia, the Cosa Nostra, that was your life. And you did whatever you were told to do. And if you wanted to get out, you could get out, but they'd be carrying you out.
One rule was to keep your hands off of other mafiosos' wives and daughters. When Big Sal was inducted in 1974, the boss made that especially clear.
He said that you could never dishonor anybody in this family or any other Cosa Nostra family by fooling around with their wives, their daughters, any of their relatives sexually or any way. You sold your soul to the devil. Once you shake hands with the devil, you never get that stain off your hands.
Even so, guys are lined up around the block hoping for that handshake. The mob is rich and powerful. Some say it runs New York.
The easiest way to get yourself whacked is over money. Some think that Larry Champagne Corosa's real trouble wasn't his dalliance with Gia. It was a quarrel with her brother, Michael. Michael and Larry had a couple of potentially explosive issues that had nothing to do with Gia and a lot to do with money.
In the early 80s, Michael Francis and his friend Larry both hit the jackpot. The pot of gold comes courtesy of some Russian gangsters from nearby Brighton Beach, Brooklyn's little Odessa.
This so-called Russian gangsters came up with a oil and gas bootleg gasoline scheme whereby they would sell gasoline at service stations, collect the money just like any other service station, and not forward the federal excise taxes to the federal government.
Say they would sell to a gas station gasoline that actually cost $1, but there was 40 cents in taxes. They would collect $1.40, and they would keep the 40 cents. And it meant millions.
According to Big Sal, it was actually Larry Carrozza who got the whole thing rolling by introducing his friend and partner Michael to some of the Russians.
Now, as the Russian gangsters were doing this, they felt they needed protection from other gangsters who were going to try and come in and take over their scheme.
When Michael Francisi learned about this, he said this was terrific. And what he did was, he now strong-armed these Russians into becoming partners with the Columbo family.
The Russian scam was a criminal masterpiece. When the state started looking for its money, company was long gone. You could keep all that money. And that's exactly what the Russians and Michael Francesi did. They played three-card Monte with the government, and they won every time.
$11, $12 million a week they were making. Michael made hundreds of millions of dollars.
In no time at all, Francis and Carosa will live in a gangster's paradise. They were both making good money. One way or another, cash, as they say, was always on hand.
But it turns out that Gia's affair with Larry isn't the only dangerous secret at the Francis dinner table. Although Michael's making millions on the gas scam, he manages to keep that information from his Mafia bosses. According to his mom, Tina, he doesn't even clue in his own dad.
Sonny didn't know what was going on. We didn't get any money from it. I don't know how to explain that any better. We never saw a dime.
Tina says Larry's trying to do the right thing. He wants them to share the loot and keep everything on the up and up with the bosses. And it's supposedly Larry's scam, remember? Even if Michael's not running it. Nobody knows if Larry ever spilled the beans about Michael keeping the money. But Tina notices that as her son grows richer, his friendship with Larry is cooling.
I know that sometime during the time that Michael was making money, Larry and Michael started to separate. Money is the root of all evil. What do you want me to tell you? Up until all this oil business happened, they were very, very close. And then I think the relationship was divided then.
Larry is spending like crazy, and that makes him risky to Michael, who is trying to keep how much money they are making a secret. And Larry's cut reduces the amount going to everybody else. For guys who'd slit each other's throats over a truckload of boosted VCRs, what do you think a couple of $100 million would do? Teach them to share? Huh, fat chance.
So, with all these millions in play, and with Larry Carrozza supposedly a loyal Mafia son, why is it that 4 men are gathering in the back room of Lolly's candy store to decide whether or not to put out a contract on him? That, my friends, is a very good question.
It's May of 1983, and Columbo crime family soldier Big Sal Mota is attending his other family. Mrs. Mota is having a baby.
While I was in the waiting room, 2 guys from my crew were coming into the hospital. And they weren't the 2 guys that I thought would come to see if I was doing okay or my wife was doing okay. I knew that there was something up, you know. When they said we have to do something, I know what that terminology means. We gotta kill somebody. So I was a little upset by it. Doesn't anybody know how to kill somebody? What, are they gonna come and bother me? My wife has given birth here. But I understood that it was a serious situation, you know, and I didn't need to show my teeth, because that's the last thing I wanted to do was provoke anybody.
There's no doubt that Big Sal was known as either a hitman or someone who'd go along. And he was a terrifying guy. Even if you didn't want to hit somebody, he was a knee breaker, a jaw breaker. He would take care of you. So he was feared.
So I said my goodbyes, and I went with them, and we went to the candy store on Avenue U.
It was no accident that Big Sal was tapped for the Carosa job. I mean, he was big. Add to that, disciplined, efficient, and a master craftsman in the killing trade. Sal was the Columbo go-to guy for arranging sudden departures. If the destination was eternity, then Big Sal was the Columbo's in-house travel agent.
Big Sal did not have a reputation for being a psychopath. He had a reputation for being a gangster, someone who knew that at times you're gonna have to kill, and when that time came, he was ready, willing, and able to do the work.
This was something Big Sal discovered early on and after he killed for the first time.
I had like a glow about me. I don't know. I just felt like the adrenaline was so high. It was hours before I came down. And then I felt invincible.
Like Larry Carrozza and Mike Francis, Big Sal Mota was born into a gangster's family.
Well, my grandfather was a capo in the Gambino family. So we had a lot of roots and a lot of ties to La Cosa Nostra. I grew up in a neighborhood that was called the bedroom of the mob. I think there were more mobsters in that little area than anywhere else in the United States. And, you know, after hearing all those Robin Hood stories and seeing these guys all driving new cars, all wearing suits every day. I was intrigued by it.
The Mafia Sal grew up admiring has its hooks into almost every profitable venture in New York City. Essentially, they have a tax on every construction project and commercial operation, and any illegal transaction. You know, gambling, prostitutes. They are the enforcers who keep the money flowing.
A lot of law enforcement officials try to portray organized crime mafia big shots as masterminds, as really intellectual, intelligent, crafty people. Most of the mafiosi couldn't exist as businessmen. The only edge they have is they're willing to kill you or break your knee or threaten you.
Almost any industry you can think of, restaurants, hotels, they had their hands in almost everything. They had a great influence in New York.
They were supposed to be men that would help you. You had a problem, you would go to them and they would solve a problem for you. But the problems were just street problems and things like that. Beyond that, they don't have a 9-to-5 job, you know. They don't pack a lunch, that's for sure.
They don't have to pack lunches. New York restaurant owners know better than to present a made guy with a bill. Like most of Gotham's business owners, they take the low-risk approach when a mob guy pays them a visit. Now, the common thread is this. Columbos get paid off by people who are afraid they'll get injured, killed, or have their businesses ruined if they don't pay. Simple, effective, you know, your basic parasites. The tools of their trade are fists, knives, and guns. Mostly guns. Big Sal could use any of them, but he had a special feeling for firearms.
You know, the guns are an extension of you. I knew how to break down weapons, how to take care of them. I would take it apart, clean it, dry fire it. If you don't take care of the guns and they jam and you're in the middle of the street, what do? Well, I had to go to the range and shoot a lot. I had to be good at it. You learn fast how to be good at it because it seemed like I was always the one that had to go do it.
It's his lethal skill that gets Machioda pulled out of the maternity ward and into that meeting in Lolly's candy store. The back room of Lolly's candy store certainly doesn't look like a courtroom, but it is. You really don't want your case to be tried here. For one thing, you don't have any of those rights the government has to respect. In fact, you won't even know about it. There are a few versions of who called this meeting and why, but there's no dispute about whose case was on the docket. Larry Champagne Carosa. The main guy Sal Machioda has to meet is Joe Tomasello. Joe T, a Columbo underboss.
Well, you know, so I went there, sat down at the table with the two guys that came to get me and Joe. And Joe says, you know, Sal, we gotta kill Larry.
Officers get killed for not paying attention to the rules. There are any number of rules that gangsters can violate that carry the death penalty. Fooling around with somebody else's wife is the obvious one. Stealing money from the boss is another good one. Obviously, being a cooperator, being an informant. All of those reasons are reasons to, earn you the death penalty in the mob.
Big Sal's loyalty is beyond reproach, so he can protest about killing Larry, and he does.
So we looked at each other, and then I took it upon myself to ask him, what in the world did he do that he's got to get killed? And Joe says, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but he was f***ing around with Michael, Francise's sister. So I said, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, I don't know if I believe that. I said, I'll do whatever we got to do, but I just find that hard to believe.
I mean, the prevailing wisdom why Larry Carrozza was killed was because he disrespected Sonny Francese by getting Sonny Francese's daughter, Gia, involved in drug use. he was fooling around with her while he was married.
But is fooling around with Gia the real reason? Big Sal doesn't think so.
I don't know that. Unless it was convenient for you to have that as an excuse to get rid of Larry so that you could grab all the gasoline money. Because we're talking about a lot of money here.
There's some things about this story nobody's ever gonna know for sure. Remember, just about everybody involved is a convicted criminal. Big Sal says he was told it wasn't Sonny who filed the beef against Larry, it was Michael. But that's not the way Michael tells it.
So Michael Frances says he had nothing to do with his former best friend getting whacked. Frances does admit he knew the hit was gonna happen. Now, in Michael's version, he tried to save Larry. He put his version in his book, Quitting the Mob.
In Michael's story, it goes like this. He gets wind of the contract on Larry, and he races to Larry's funeral home. He confronts Carosa and tells him the bosses know about him and Gia. Carosa argues. Michael says he tells Larry to get out, to run for his life, and he even offers him cash. Larry, Michael writes, spurns the money and shouts at him to mind his own business.
If Michael Franzese wanted to have Larry Carrozza killed, he could have asked, and it probably would have been done. Whether it was Michael Franzese who set it in motion, Sonny Franzese who set it in motion, is really difficult, to determine at this stage. But the plot to kill Larry Carrozza had to come from within the crew that Larry Carrozza belonged to.
Big Sal's protest is overruled. The decision is made, the hit's gonna happen, and there's nothing Sal can do about it.
What choice did I have? What could I say? Oh, no, I'm not gonna do it. Larry don't deserve that. Don't I know what happens to a guy if he refuses to do something that they tell you to do? You're a dead man.
Big Sal, whether he liked it or not, was going out with his friend Larry for the last time.
The night he goes for a ride with Big Sal, Larry Carrozza probably thinks he's getting his reward for all the times he's helped out his Mafia pals. Thanks to the Russians and the gas tax scam, they're all getting rich. Now he's been told all he has to do is prove one last time he belongs. All he has to do is one more chore for the mob, and he becomes a made man for sure.
It's been a week since the sit-down here at Lolly's Candy Store. Larry Carrozza's fate has already been decided. He thinks he's heading out for a routine bit of ass-kicking with some pals. The good news, such as it is Larry won't be making dangerous mistakes anymore. Getting into the car will be his very last one.
Authorized hits are always planned in some way, because possibly the intended victim might be suspicious. He's lured to some spot where he can be done away with very effectively. For the most part, the Mafia hits are conducted a very simple way. Put a slug in your brain.
Most people like to think that killers are all sociopaths. To be sure, there are some sociopaths in their group, no question about it. But most of them were just ordinary guys, and they learned how to kill. And after a while, it became easy.
The guys he's going to meet, Big Sal and his partner that night, Jimmy Angelino, are not thrilled about being ordered to kill Larry. Big Sal is taking it especially hard.
I felt terrible. I liked Larry. I pretty much was disgusted with the whole situation. Doing this to somebody that I really liked, that never did anything bad to me, was not a good thing.
Big Sal does have one thing he can control. He can choose how Larry is going to die. Making those kind of end-of-life decisions is something Sal knows quite a bit about.
I wanted to keep everything at a minimum. I never liked doing it in a house because then you had to bury the body. If it was something I was doing in the street, I'd use a shotgun first, knock the guy down, then go over and finish him with a pistol. To me, it was faster, easier. People hear gunshots, they run the other way. It was easiest just to kill him and leave him in his own car than to have to bring him somewhere, kill him, dig a hole, bury him, get rid of his car. I said, you know what we'll do? We'll get Larry to come and meet us, and we'll tell Larry that we gotta go find a guy that owes money, and we're gonna rough the guy up.
Big Sal followed his orders. He told Larry he needed his help to collect a bad debt. Larry believed him. The collection rules was one that Big Sal and Jimmy Angelino came up with, knowing that Larry was very eager to prove himself. Big Sal tells Larry to show up alone and in a vehicle that can't be traced back to any Columbos. Larry borrows his mother's big sedan.
Yeah, of course it was on purpose. It was the easiest thing was to kill him in his own car and leave him there. And when I opened the door handle of the car, I used the sleeve off my shirt not to touch the door handle, and I had the gloves in my pocket when I first got in the car.
Larry doesn't ask why he isn't the one driving. Angelino takes the driver's seat. Larry is riding shotgun. Big Sal takes the seat behind him.
Once I was in the car and everybody was talking and listening to the radio, slowly but surely I started to slip the gloves on. I had the gun also in my pocket, and then I was ready to go.
The men drive across Brooklyn on the Bell Parkway. They pull into a residential area not far from the Verrazano Bridge.
We got where we were going. I kind of took control. I said, Jimmy, you go up and ring his bell and get him down here. And then when you come down with him, Larry and I'll get out and we'll hammer him, you know? It was a 38 5-inch barrel revolver. I didn't want to take any chances with automatics, jamming up because I was in a car and the gun had a fire or I was in trouble because once I made my move, if I didn't take him out, I got a problem on my hands.
So, Big Sal, Jimmy Angelino, and Larry Carrozza are stopped on a quiet Brooklyn residential street. Larry thinks he's about to show his two companions that he can be the kind of muscle the Columbos need. He thinks he's passed the test to become a real gangster. That happy thought is his last. Larry Carrozza never sees it coming.
As soon as Jimmy got out of the car and closed the door of the car, with the noise from closing the door of the car, I timed the shot and hit him in the back of the head. And his head exploded like a watermelon. And then I put another one in his head, 2 shots, not even an inch from his head. Maybe that's why the blood came flying out, but it wasn't even blood, it was clots. Probably brain matter. I looked like Dracula, I had blood all over me.
Sal has done this before. He's planned ahead. He has a getaway car already in position.
We also got 2 crash cars, and we parked them on the street there during the day. The crash car behind me pulled up and shielded me so that I could walk across the street and get in the other car. Then I got back in the car. We went about 2 blocks. We threw the guns in the sewer. That was something I always did. When I was done, I always flipped them in the sewer. They would never be found. And we went about our business. Big
Sal is driven home.
It's kind of like you're in shock when you do something like that, you know? It takes you a couple hours to regain your senses a little bit, you know? And I came out of the shower, I had something to eat, called my wife at the hospital, and I went to sleep.
Larry Carrozza's body is found later that night. There are no fingerprints in the car. The gun is never found. He is 3 weeks past his 30th birthday. The next morning, Salvatore Mischiota goes to the hospital to pick up his wife and newborn daughter. Life goes on. Larry Champagne Cora is no more. He was here for a good time, not a long time. He did some dangerous things. Which of them got him killed remains to this day a matter of debate. Did he die because Sonny Francis had a problem with him running around with his teenage daughter? Sonny is a notorious killer. Did Michael Francis use Gia as an excuse to shut Larry up about the Russian gas scam? Or was the problem that the bosses knew about the scam and wanted Larry's share for themselves? A lot of people are pretty sure what doomed Larry was greed.
I believe that they killed Larry Carrozza only to get control of the Russians because there was so much money involved and they didn't want to have to share it with Larry and his father. That's my opinion. And everybody that I've seen get killed in the Columbo family, somewhere along the line, it benefited the family monetarily to kill those people.
We don't know why Larry Carrozza died any more than Larry did, or Big Sal, the guy who killed him. We do know how Big Sal got away with the murder. A week or so after Carrozza died, Sal Mischiota was called into the local precinct. The detective was named Louis Eppolito.
I went upstairs to the detective's room, and he was up there, and I knew him, and he knew me. I says, "They're cleaning up the neighborhood." He started laughing. He says, "Yeah, it's spring cleaning."
The headline says it all. The cops who killed for mob. Louis Eppolito was one of the most corrupt cops in NYPD history. He wasn't just on the take. I mean, he was a hitman himself. Making sure investigations of mob hits went nowhere was just part of his job.
When Louis Eppolito got the Carosa case on his desk, as the assigned detective to find the killer, based on what I know about him, he probably chuckled to himself, realized what he had, and said, essentially, I'll go through the motions and I will do one of two things. I'll either find nobody or I'll frame somebody for this. That case was never getting solved.
They can't keep that gas scam on the wraps forever. It lasts 2 more years. Michael Francis is arrested for the gas scam and some other crimes in 1985. He gets a 10-year sentence.
He served 5, and when he got out, he declared he was reformed. He broke with his family and wrote a book, Quitting the Mob. Today, he's a born-again preacher. He gives motivational speeches about redemption.
There is no second act for his sister. Gia never got over what happened to Larry.
Emotionally for Gia, yes, it was a setback. They were absolutely smitten, yes. And all of a sudden, she decided to start a new life. You know, she just wanted to be away from this whole scene.
There are a few more wasted years before Gia gets out of the scene for good. She's found dead of an overdose in a Florida hotel room. She's only 27.
I miss my children just like you cannot believe. Terribly.
In some ways, you could look at the murder of Champagne Cora as the beginning of the end for the mob, too. I mean, not because Larry was so important. I mean, he was just a thug with a nice personality. The canary in the coal mine isn't important either. But when that bird keels over, the miners know it's time to get out.
It took Big Sal another 10 years to do that. Crime is the only life he knew. But Sal knows that what he'd done unto Larry would surely someday be done unto him. You know, that old golden rule?
I was paranoid every day. I was paranoid every day that my number was up. I was always watching everything, trying to notice if there was anything going on under the surface. You know, I was always at high alert.
So in 1993, when Big Sal finds himself on the losing side of a Columbo family civil war, one of his friends proposes a meeting with the other faction. The friend was told there'll be no hard feelings. Bygones would be bygones. Big Sal smells a rat. Unlike Larry, Sal knows when he's being set up.
I was around those guys for years. I know how they think, and I know how they operate. And I would say without exaggeration, they're gonna kill me within 15 minutes.
Sal's been a hitman long enough to know when it's time to get out of Dodge. And he does. He skips the meeting.
I had it. I've had my full of that lifestyle. I couldn't handle it no more. My kids started to get a little older. You know, I brought them into this world. I had to be a father to them. So I made a decision. Spoke to my wife about it. My wife said, do whatever you need to do that we could stay together as a family. And that's what I did.
Sal goes to the FBI. He tells them everything he knows and a few things he makes up. He testifies against his former Columbo colleagues. Sal serves 5 years himself. Since getting out, he's been living in hiding. But he keeps most of his family together. Larry Carrozza's 3 kids, on the other hand, grow up without a dad.
For Big Sal, the end of Larry Carrozza's life was a turning point. He knew Larry didn't deserve to die. Sal became disillusioned with, and eventually disgusted by, the guys who told him to do it. He no longer saw them or himself as men of honor.
I wasted my life completely. The people that I had an effect on, like Larry Carrozza, his wife, his family, I hurt those people. I mean, and the hurt that I caused my own family. It's taken a toll on me, physically and mentally. You know, I believe that all the things that I'm going through now are because of the things that I did.